Senator Campos.
Present.
Wait, no.
Present.
Representative Eli.
Here.
I think yes. Who's R. Sanchez?
Thank you.
Representative Ezel.
Here.
Representative Gallegos. Representative Gallegos, are you here?
I see her there, but I think she's muted. Everyone, please, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself because we're already getting some pretty strong feedback.
My guess is that's coming from the Pro Tem's office and the two laptops that are probably fairly close to each other.
Right. So you guys in the Pro Tem's office, please turn off you got to mute both microphones on both computers, please.
Senator Ingle, are you here? Representative Lundstrom. Representative Montoya. Senator
I'm here,
Sanchez.
Jared.
Okay, thank you, Representative.
Okay.
Senator Sanchez.
Present.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Senator Smith. Senator Smith, are you one of the ones in the Pro Tem's office? You might be muted. Thank you. Representative Stapleton? You are muted, Representative.
I'm here.
Thank you. Representative Townsend?
Here.
Senator Worth?
Present.
You're muted as well, Senator.
I'm present. Here.
Senator Woods?
I'm here. I almost
Senator.
answered early.
Thank you. Speaker Egoff?
I'm here.
And
Yes,
Senator Pace.
I'm here on the computer, Jared.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, so we are here as a continuation from our last meeting, and we've got some updates from Mr. Burciaga. Shall I turn the floor over to you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. On the agenda is per diem approval. This approval is for the newly elected members to receive per diem, if they so choose, to attend the ethics training, which we're expecting to do on Monday, December the 14th, and for their orientation, which we're expecting to do on the 15th and 16th, that Tuesday and Wednesday following. No decision has been made as to whether these will be in person, virtual, or hybrid. But we just need approval so that the members, the newly elected members, if they choose, would get per diem at the public rate member, not at the legislator rate, which is what we do every 2 years. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
I try to.
All right.
So,
Is there a discussion?
so move, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, we have Leader Stapleton, and we'll have a second from Whip Gallegos. Is there objection? Okay, so we've got approval on per diem. The next item on the agenda is a continuation of the conversation we've been having about 2021 session planning. The issues that remain unresolved from our last meeting is the issue of the possibility of using the Santa Fe Community Convention Center for a portion of the legislative session. We discussed for committee rooms, as well as how we're going to convene ourselves at the constitutionally appointed time. I know that since our last meeting, there's been at least 2 meetings of the House Democratic Caucus. I believe House Republicans met as well. I know the Senate Democrats have met. And we have the issue for today of what do we do about the convention center? And I'd like to see if Senator Wirth, if you have any thoughts about the convention center.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm certainly happy to give a kind of brief consensus of the position that the Senate Democrats, including the 7 new members who will be back in January, all kind of came to. There was a strong feeling that we needed to have the session during the 60-day window in the Constitution with the method to be determined. I think it's fair to say that since we last met on Friday, a week ago Friday, things have really changed. This situation is very much evolving with the governor's kind of decision, plus the announcement of 2 potential vaccines with efficacy in the 90 to 94% today. And so it's hard to really make a final decision on exactly how we do the session during the 60 days. But I think the consensus among those members that are going to be here in our chamber was we needed to stay within the constitutional window of the 60-day period. And consistent with that, kind of my feeling is that as long as there is an exit out of a contract on the convention center, that taking that option off the table for us to have potentially, if we need it, doesn't make sense. So I guess I'm in favor, provided we can get out of the contract so we're not locked into anything, which I understand we can, and Director Burciaga can jump in on that, that I would just suggest that we go ahead and provide the Director Burciaga with authority to do that. Just because that keeps maximum options open for us doing a session in some format in those 60 days, whether virtual, some in person, hybrid. I just think it gives us the most options possible. That's what I have, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. And the House Democratic Caucus has also decided to proceed in the constitutional window, as folks have started calling it, which would have us meet the 3rd Tuesday in January and go through a 60-day session. But I think it's obvious to acknowledge that a lot is changing on the vaccine front, on the therapeutics front, on all sorts of levels. And so I think keeping options open makes sense. There's no reason to deprive ourselves of the convention center as an option if folks need it, and it's something that could be used by one chamber or both or neither as we go forward. Is there conversation, questions? Folks could, if folks want to be recognized, please. Representative Christine Trujillo, I see your hand up first. The floor is yours. But we can't hear you. Yeah. Plus, so there's you've got an issue going on in.
Mr. Speaker, Stuart Engel.
Senator.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, we're having a caucus tomorrow of the Senate Republicans, but I haven't really heard anything that would indicate to me that we'd be against using the Santa Fe Convention Center for the Senate if it was necessary and needed. So I think we'd be fine with that too. So that's like I say, we haven't had an official caucus meeting on it, but I haven't heard anybody that was discussing it that was necessarily against that. So I think we'd be in favor of having that certainly as an option. And I think the city of Santa Fe has been extremely open and generous about their offer of whatever we want to use, we can use it, and we can figure out the money, and they'll give it back to us if we don't use it. So it's not a financial commitment that we lose on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, I see Representative Rod Montoya. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. So just, I know that the term that is being used right now was the legislative window, the constitutional window. So as I read that, it states that we have to come in on a certain day, but we can adjourn at any time. Is that incorrect, Mr. Speaker?
So there's a nuance in that, and so yes is the simple answer, but with a caveat that if one chamber passes a motion to adjourn sine die, the other chamber does not, then the chamber that voted to adjourn sine die is required by the Constitution to reconvene within 72 hours. So we can only adjourn the legislature sine die if both chambers agree to do so.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. As far as the options that are on the table, is one of those options to, if we're still in the middle of an outbreak of COVID, that we would potentially come in and leave? Is that still an option, Mr. Speaker?
It is. I mean, it is technically possible to come in, convene the legislature, and then leave, having done nothing, having passed, a handful of bills. So yes, it's possible. I don't think that is the will of the majority to do that, however.
So thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. So if we were to enter into this agreement with the Santa Fe Convention Center, and we had a number of folks that came down with COVID, what do you foresee in a situation like that? And the reason I'm asking that question, I'm got on this video a little bit late because I've got my grandkids here, because at their school, the PE teacher got COVID, and they shut down the entire school because of one teacher. And so I'm just wondering what we are looking at if we come in, we enter into an agreement with the Santa Fe Convention Center. Is that something that they would let us out of if we had to disperse, if we were there and we had to pull back, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Montoya, I don't know. The contract is under negotiation, so it hasn't been proposed yet. Mr. Burciaga is listening, so we can, certainly include that question in the negotiation. It also, I think, the question presumes that a couple of things that might not come to pass, and that is that a meeting would have all the legislators physically here. There's been a lot of conversation about doing the session, completely virtually. So that's always, an option. If that's the case, if someone's, at home and a location remote from the Capitol and they get COVID, of course, there'd be no reason to shut down. We've also had instances where legislators, may, or at the session, if a legislator or a staff person is confirmed positive with COVID, then I think we would do the contact tracing, see who's been a close contact with a COVID positive person, which the health department says is being within 6 feet of the person for at least 5 minutes. So I think it would be very fact specific what we would do if a legislator or a staff person becomes infected during a session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we enter into this agreement with Santa Fe Convention Center and it is decided that we're going to go completely virtual, that would be enough of a reason to be able to get out of that contract, Mr. Speaker?
Again, Representative Montoya, I don't know. We don't have a contract that's been negotiated, right? So the idea is that Mr. Burciaga is going to hear questions and concerns from members, would then have a conversation with the city manager, I presume, or someone at the city government of Santa Fe, and then would work with leadership to decide if we're going to enter the contract. I can't tell you what's granular level detail of the contract because it's not yet negotiated.
So, Mr. Speaker, when we had our last legislative council meeting, it was stated that if we had to get out of the contract, that we would. It seems like that may not exactly be the case. You're saying it hasn't been negotiated yet. I kind of was under the assumption, and I think by Senator Engel's comments, I think that's the assumption as well, is that if we can get out of the contract, there's less of a concern about entering into the contract with so many questions unanswered. I mean, right now we're still at the highest levels of COVID that we've seen from its inception.
Okay, maybe Mr. Burciaga could answer your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Montoya. My initial discussion with, I'm hoping you can still hear me, Representative Montoya. But
I can.
Okay, my initial discussion with the gentleman who's in charge of the convention center was that if we came up to the day before session and it was decided at that point that there would not be a session held at the convention center, that we would be able to get out of it, that we would have a no penalty clause providing for that. If I understood your question correctly, if we start and use the convention center for any length of time, would we still be able to get out of that contract if we had to stop? And I don't know the answer to that, but that is something that I would bring up with them, that presumably if we were there for a week or a month, at that point we may have to stop. Then I would ask to put in some kind of agreement that would prorate the amount that we paid. Obviously, we would want to pay them for services provided, and then decide if we're going to have to come back later, that would still be available. Those are questions I would raise with the city.
Thank you for that, Raul. Yeah, it appears if we were to enter into some sort of agreement that there's several ways out, considering that there's so much that we still don't know, and if things remain as they are today, I mean we've got the entire state completely in lockdown, and virtually currently we have so many private businesses and just private movement of individuals across the state has been completely eliminated to some degree. And so if we're in that situation, I just want to make sure we're able to get out of that. And to be honest, if we're going to be requiring that in schools and other places, that a single case causes the entire school to shut down, just a little concerned of the optics of us doing some things that are contrary to what everyone else is being asked to do. So, Mr. Speaker, the governor has mentioned a special session to come in and address some of the things that I believe you mentioned last week, that we needed to come in and deal with some, potential relief package for the public. And it seems to me if the governor is going to go through with that special session to handle those emergency type of issues, I'm just wondering if it's as important to be here during that time. If we're, for instance, if the vaccine is not out, if it's not widely accepted, if it's not, we did that, Mr. Speaker, last year. We did that short special session, 5 days or so, and we had numerous problems. We had first off, all of the bills handled in the special session were sent to a single committee. We had problems with internet connectivity. We had folks who couldn't call in from their communities with poor service in their area. I mean, a majority of the state has very, very bad service. So the idea that has been floated by some that we had more involvement by the public during that special session, I would have to disagree with. I don't believe that is how the public views it, especially in the rural parts of the state. So I am concerned about the public's involvement and the potential of bills going to a single committee. Mr. Speaker, I'm just concerned if we're going to do a regular session and the public is limited in participation, I think that really harms the overall credibility of what we get done during that time. So I'm just concerned. I want to lay those concerns out there. If we're going to limit media access, if we're going to limit the public's access, I'm very concerned. If we're going to go virtual, we'd be better off to do what we can in a short period of time, get out of there, and then come back and handle the bigger issues when the public can be involved. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next, you have Senator Brandt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry about that. I was looking up something real quick. So are we simply deciding right now on whether to use the convention center, or are we having a full discussion on the whole session?
So the issue before the council is one, whether or not to authorize Mr. Burciaga to continue to negotiate and enter into a contract with the city of Santa Fe to make available to the legislature the Santa Fe Community Convention Center during the time of the 60-day session. And along with that, there will be attendant questions about public safety measures taken at the Capitol building itself. And I would suggest to the body to the committee that we include that in the authorization of Mr. Burciaga to continue to allow him to make adjustments as public health conditions evolve.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman, I appreciate it. I'm just trying to figure out exactly what we're having a vote on here in a little bit. I think as long as the contract is severable and we don't lose any funding, it doesn't hurt to keep our options open. Like I said, though, last week, I'm not really sure what it gains us from having the convention center, because if the orders stay as they are today with the mass gathering, the mass gathering may not apply to us as elected officials, which is part of the order, by the way, for those who haven't been looking at the orders. It says that elected officials are exempt from the order, but the public is not. By the way, neither is our staff. And so when we're saying our staff is going to go to the conventions, well, we've already met the 5-person mass gathering. So anyone else there is going to actually be disobeying the governor's orders. I don't think that we want to open people up to that. Whether or not it would be enforced doesn't really matter. It's kind of a moot point. We don't want the public to be in a position where we're asking them to violate the governor's health order. However, we don't know what's going to happen between now and January. So we're trying to make decisions without all the facts, because the facts aren't available yet, is the way I see it. So I think it doesn't hurt to allow that to be set up and be put in position. I think that Mr. Burciago needs to make sure that the city of Santa Fe is not going to have some outlay that's going to affect them negatively by doing that. Also, though, if we were to back out, I hope that makes sense. And so, it doesn't hurt to have that available if we need it. I don't see the scenario in which it would actually help us. And in fact, I think it might open us up to more susceptibility to exposure, and to our staff having more exposure, because they're having to come from this building, leave this building, go to that building, have the exposure there, plus the possibility of exposure to people who we don't have any testing on to know whether or not they're positive or not. But I will tell you that testing is only good for the moment that it's given. And you can get a negative test one day and a week later be positive. So, we need to make sure that we understand that as well, because that's the way this thing works. As far as the session itself goes, we can take some preventative measures no matter what is going on to have, we have a pretty limited access to our building as it is, where we only have 2 entry points, main entry points. People can be there testing for fevers, asking people questions before they're allowed in the building, whether they be staff or not. So I think we can take some measures to try to keep us safer, and just hope that everyone does, stays well. But I don't see any harm in going ahead and letting Mr. Burciago get that contract together, as long as it's not binding.
Very good. Thank you. Next, we have Representative Townsend.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Has there been any conversation with the Santa Fe City Fathers formally, where we know that the group of us coming into Santa Fe during and in opposition to the governor's orders, are they okay with that? How does that work? I mean, it seems like we're kind of taking them for granted.
Well, I haven't just, I don't know exactly how to answer the question, but there's been no official communication. Also, I don't agree with your statement that convening the legislature violates the governor's orders. I don't think there's any colorable legal argument that would say that convening the legislature violates any public health order or any executive order. I think the first part I don't agree with.
Yeah, and I didn't expect that you would. I would tell you that whether it agrees, whether it has a legal foundation or not, it is certainly a question that I think a responsible legislature would have to, under these conditions, address. We're at a time when we have at least 2 vaccines, maybe 3, that seem to be on the horizon. We have a shutdown order that has impacted every family in Santa Fe as well as every other city. And it just seems a bit disingenuous for the legislature to say, well, the governor's orders do not affect me, But does it also mean that we don't respect what the governor's trying to do? I'm just trying to, I am all for showing up there on January 21st as required constitutionally to swear people in to do what needs to be done to provide continuing government. But Mr. Speaker, one more time, I would tell you that it does not seem to be respectful to a community that we're going to impact, even though we may have the legal right to do it. It certainly puts us in a position of thumbing our nose at them and saying, well, the governor's orders are not, do not have jurisdictional implications to us. So you guys stay home. You can't come to the Capitol. Some of you that are close can call in. With the 49th worst broadband system in the state, others of you will be excluded. It just doesn't seem to ring true to me if we really want a fair, ethical, transparent government to not consider those things. I'm not at all opposed to it if we can do it safely, and I'd be the first one to say that. But right now, it seems like it's a real step. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You said it seems like it's a real step. What is it?
Yeah, it seems like it is very difficult for me to represent to any constituents across the state that we are going to be able to go to Santa Fe, utilize the convention center or the Capitol in a manner that we know is safe. When heck, last week we had economic and rural development right there in the chambers, and we had a number of I guess we had a legislator test positive and others exposed. It just seems like we're taking a risk, Mr. Speaker, that we're doing just because we think we can, because the executive orders don't apply to us, but we're going to do it anyway. And I think that's going to cause us problem with the public in general.
Okay.
And I don't know how you plan to address that, but I would be interested in your comments.
Well, I can assure everyone that any meeting that we have will be conducted with the utmost care and concern for the safety of the public, the legislative staff, and legislators in that order. And the safety of the public is going to be paramount. And despite what Representative Montoya and you have said, we had tremendous public participation during the special session, people participating via Zoom and by phoning in from all over the state. I was in a committee meeting with you in the Judiciary Committee meeting during the special session when we had more than a dozen people participating on the Zoom platform, 2 of whom were calling in from a phone line. No tablet, no smartphone, no computer. So anything that we do will be done in a way that expands transparency and gives greater opportunity for public participation than we've had before. So that is the commitment that we've made. I feel like we learned a lot in the special session. We can improve upon it if we end up in a virtual situation in January. And we've also learned, I'll also point out, we've learned a lot from county commissions and city councils all over the state who have been conducting their business virtually. The City Council of Albuquerque has 9 members and all their staff, and they meet virtually, as does the Bernalillo County Commission and the City of NFA. They meet virtually, and there's been a lot of good information being exchanged back and forth so that we can make sure that we are adopting best practices that have been developed by our government colleagues around the state.
Well, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, you may have that opinion, and you're certainly you're certainly have a right to it. But I will tell you that the vast majority of people in rural New Mexico do not concur with that. They believe they were cut out, they were excluded, they didn't know what was happening, when it was happening, they were not able to get on. It was a fiasco, Mr. Speaker, and it was not with more transparency, and it was not something that I think served us well.
Well, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree. I would also point your attention to the New Mexico Game Commission, which has been meeting virtually all year, which deals with issues of great importance to rural New Mexicans. And they've had tremendous success getting public input and public participation at all of their meetings. And they've been doing it in a 100% virtual format as well. And thank you for your comments. Next, we have Senator Ivy Soto.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I really appreciate the extent to which our colleagues from San Juan County in southeast New Mexico have been taking the governor's orders seriously, and the gravitas behind those orders. As part of the balancing act, I think we need to deal with is that as a separate branch of government, those orders do not apply to us. As a separate branch of government, those orders do not apply to our staff. As a separate branch of government, those orders do not apply to our meetings, including meetings that involve the public. And at the same time, as leaders, I think we have a responsibility to model leadership and to model appropriate anti-contagion behavior so that the public can see us operating in a manner that understands that we're not setting the terms, the contagion is setting the terms, and that candidly, I think almost everything we're doing right now is less than ideal. It's not something that we're choosing to do at this point because we want to. We're doing it because we have to. What I appreciate very much about the motion that we have right now is the motion provides an option for public participation that may not exist otherwise. Are we going to be able to exercise that option for public participation? I don't know if we're going to be able to exercise that option for public participation. But the fact that Mr. Speaker, what you and President Pro Tem Papin have brought before this council in terms of an option to use the Santa Fe Convention Center means that what we're looking for is if we can involve the public in any meaningful way, we will do that. And however we're able to do that, we want to keep those options open. In that respect, I think this is a good option for us to pursue. I hope that we approve it so that Mr. Burciaga can proceed to enter into a contract, negotiate that with the city of Santa Fe, so that we preserve those options. We do have some vaccines that have been announced. One of the interesting things as people are looking at whether or not there would be any distribution of vaccines and what the timing of that would be is, as it turns out, for those vaccines that require cold medical storage, New Mexico happens to have at the VA hospital in Albuquerque one of the largest medical cold storage facilities in the country as a result of the medicine that was needed for the hantavirus. So in fact, actually, New Mexico is well positioned to be to be able to distribute vaccines that some other states may need to ramp up for in terms of being able to do that. I am putting in the chat right now a link to to the healthdata.org information about New Mexico. I think it's helpful for people to take a look at it. For those who don't have access to the chat, the website is COVID-19, no dash, just COVID-19.healthdata.org. COVID-19.healthdata.org. And then the link is specific to New Mexico. If you go there and do a search to New Mexico, you can bring it up. And it has projections actually to March 21st, which is right around when we would be adjourning. And people can see what the current projections are if we mask, if we don't mask, if we loosen up, if we don't loosen up. And, those projections are always subject to being updated based on new information and new data. But it does help us to see that, in fact, during the legislative session, it doesn't look good. What looking at that health data, I think, should tell us is we need to remain flexible. We need to allow leadership to be able to pivot as we proceed. It may make sense for us to meet in person or hybrid. We may be required to meet virtual. There's within constitutional constraints. It may make sense for us to get a little bit of work done and come back later. And the fact of the matter is, we're not going to have all that information until we get closer to the time. What this motion does do, though, is it preserves options. And it preserves options looking at it from a perspective of access to the public, which is the attitude that we should be taking as we proceed towards the session in 2021. So I would certainly urge everybody to support the motion. And thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Representative Ezell.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. During our last meeting, I asked that we postpone any decision we made until all of us got hold of the people that we were elected to represent. And I don't know how many of y'all did or not, but I did. I took it upon myself to let my constituents know what was being discussed. And Mr. Speaker, every group I visited with, which included school boards, mayors of cities and towns, the county commissioners, let me see who all else. I can't even remember at this point who all I presented to or visited with. And plus lots of just regular everyday people that are trying to work for a living. And they were opposed, every one of them, from being kept out of the legislative process. This affects their everyday life, Mr. Speaker, and I don't blame them for feeling the way they do. This also included agricultural groups, water associations, the list goes on and on. But they wanted the opportunity to be able to come to the people's house, which is what our capital is. It is the people's house. And Mr. Speaker, lots of them wanted a copy of this 14-page logistics that was put out. And there was lots and lots of criticism regarding that. I'm going to start on page 10 of this document where it says testing. So we as legislators, according to what this says, it's advised that we should be tested approximately 5 to 6 days before session starts and again the day before session. And DOH encourages that 15 to 20% of all legislators and staff be tested each week. Does this take into account any sort of COVID tracing that goes on? That's a question.
Representative Zell, are you referring to the draft document that was circulated
Yes.
last week?
That is what I'm talking about, Ms.
Representative Zell, contact tracing is done by the New Mexico Health Department.
That's exactly right.
It's not a legislative function.
Mr. Speaker, that's what I just said. Whenever we're talking about having this legislative session take place at the Santa Fe Convention Center, it says our security and state police will be available during the session. But if the Santa Fe Convention Center is being used, state police should be there as well. What about this? And it also states that the Santa Fe Police Department would be needed regarding jurisdiction on city property. I'm assuming that we as the legislative body would also have to pay for that. Is that correct?
Mr. Burciaga, would you answer the question about Representative Zell, who pays for the state police during session?
No, Santa Fe. I said Santa Fe.
Mr. Burciaga?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Zell, we have entered into contracts with the city of Santa Fe for different services. I would expect that if we require their presence, that we would probably have to pay for that. But the discussion that I put in there was whether there could be some agreement between the state police and the city of Santa Fe that the state police might have jurisdiction because the legislature is conducting its business there. And if some need for the city police were needed, then they could step in and we could resolve that. That was just simply an issue raised about making sure we knew who had jurisdiction at the convention center. The state police has it here. The convention center, the question mark, and something that we would discuss, and I would make a negotiation with the city if you so choose, or if you move forward with that recommendation.
So, Mr. Burciaga, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Burciaga, what I'm hearing you say it would be up to the Santa Fe Police. If we do have this session over at the Santa Fe Convention Center, Mr. Speaker, would it be up to the Department of Health to go in and make sure that the place is sanitized to the standards that they have set to be COVID safe for all of us legislators, and what few constituents might be able to attend our meetings there?
Mr. Chairman and Representative, I have been talking to some experts, if you will, engineers, physicians, and we're looking at how we would develop protocols to follow both the Department of Health and the Centers for Disease Control guidelines on what are the appropriate measures for cleaning, disinfecting, and decontaminating, if necessary, any facilities that we occupy. That is definitely part of the plan. Those have not been finalized because we haven't decided what direction we're going in, but that is certainly part of the discussion and part of the plan.
Okay, and Mr. Speaker, Mr. Burciaga, on that same point then, in case we are meeting up there and we are utilizing the facilities, the Santa Fe Convention Center, have the Santa Fe hospitals what is their role in this in case there is an outbreak? Are they prepared to handle a COVID outbreak where a bunch of the people that are attending up there do happen to get sick? Have they been included in the discussion in any way, shape, or form?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Zell, not yet. However, every year before a session, Legislative Council Service coordinates with state police and other first responders, including local hospitals. And we talk about, for several years now, we've been talking about different things. We've talked about food poisoning, a bomb, an active shooter, and the like. So, yes, it is on our agenda to discuss these issues with state police, first responders, local hospitals, and the like. Obviously, a bigger issue with the pandemic, and that would be part of it. something we had planned to do anyway.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Burciaga, I think that's a real good plan no matter what the situation, whether we are at the Capitol or at the Convention Center, that the hospitals would be prepared in case of anything drastic happen. Mr. Speaker, I'm also on this document. It states that the Santa Fe Convention Center needs a 45-day lead time to get the convention center ready for our use. And that is using, what was it? How much money was the CARES? Let's see. I can't find it right off the top of my head or on this paper. Just for that, so they can update their equipment, hardware, software, blah, 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 all that type of stuff. If all those protocols are put in place to upgrade their systems where we can supposedly be transparent to all the constituents located throughout our state, that is already into what Santa Fe is going to do with the CARES money coming into our state. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, you broke up for just a bit in the middle of that, but let me see if I caught it correctly. Your question had to do with the comment in there about the city needing about a 45-day lead time
Yes.
for using CARES Act money. That's because there is a provision in the Federal CARES Act funding that says if it is not used by, I believe, December 30th, that money would revert. My understanding is that they just want to make sure that whatever they need to order, services, supplies, hardware, etc., would be ordered and received by that time frame so they can appropriately use CARES Act funding. And so we're real close to that, and that's why we wanted to look at moving forward with negotiations and discussions and a contract if feasible.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Burciaga, if I'm understanding you right, Santa Fe then has already made application for this CARES money to go in to be used on their convention center. Is that what I'm hearing? Because you just said if it wasn't used by the 31st day of December, that it would all revert. So I'm assuming.
Mr. Chairman and Representative, they haven't applied for that specifically for this issue. I believe, my understanding is the city of Santa Fe has already received CARES Act funding, and they've got some money that they can continue to use. That's part of that lump sum that they received. But if it's not used by December 30th, then it would revert. So it wasn't something that they requested specific to the legislative session. You're muted, Representative. Got it.
And thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, whenever you're talking about people are able to get online and everything, you're dead wrong. There is one area just not too far from my house that there is no cell service. They do not have access to getting on a computer. We have kids that are not being educated because there's no school going on down here. Mr. Speaker, we are in the process of excluding every bit of rural New Mexico, and I know that that is some people's intent, especially with redistricting coming up, and rural New Mexico is fixing to lose their voice, and we are doing nothing but, it's a total disgrace in my opinion, what is happening to certain areas of our state from being excluded. There is no guarantee that if these meetings are held at the convention center, if my constituents are driving 200, 250 miles up to the convention center to attend a very important meeting to them, if that's the case, that they are not going to be allowed access, Mr. Speaker. So I find it pretty hard to fathom that just because there are certain areas of the state that do have access to this, it doesn't apply to everybody. One size does not fit all because Game and Fish is a prime example. They held a meeting up by Weed, New Mexico 2 years ago. There was no cell service there. So, Mr. Speaker, I think you need to rethink what we are doing to the rural New Mexico's voice. And I just have some big problems with this. And then my last thing, Mr. Speaker, whenever you're saying that a decision needs to be reached and you said leadership is going to be involved, does that include all leadership or just the Democrat leadership?
Representative Hill, what are you talking about?
Whenever I asked early at the meeting prior to this, whenever this particular instrument came out, I asked if leadership had a hand in it. And you said, yes, they did. That was not the case. So I'm really bothered whenever you say that a decision is going to be reached and leadership will be involved. I hope it does include all of it. Thank you very much.
I do want to, members are listening to what you're saying, Representative Ezell, so I want to make sure that I make it clear again that minority leadership staff was involved with majority leadership staff in creating that document. Also, I think it's important for all the members who are here and those who are watching on the webcast, take the opportunity, to the extent we are having virtual meetings, to reach out to your communities to help folks get access at a local library, at a local school, at any local government building. Excuse me, Representative Ezell, I was happy to listen to you, and you can let me finish my sentence, if that's all right. The representatives and senators can do important work with their constituents to get them access to a phone line or to internet at a government building, library. There's lots of things that we can do to help improve access. And I have to say, and I know I speak for a great many on this committee, when I say that your claim that we want to or have ignored rural New Mexico is just not correct. And you know that yourself from the times that I've been in Roswell with you, in Artesia with Representative Townsend on our jobs listening tour. We've made multiple trips to southeast New Mexico. That's where we got the idea for the Roswell Air Center bill, which is now the law. We did that because we were visiting parts of New Mexico outside of the Central Corridor to get good ideas and bring them back to the Capitol and put them into the law. And that's exactly what we did in helping you help your community with the Air Center. I was proud to be a co-sponsor on that bill with you and to get that done, up to Governor Lujan Grisham to get that signed to help your community. Next, we have Representative Debbie Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to offer up an observation that and let everyone know that LHHS, at least, is one interim committee that has met entirely virtually this entire time, and I've had good participation from members as well as the public, and we've had public comment every time we've met. It is true that connectivity is spotty, but by practice, we have discovered that if you turn off your video for a little bit, or if you have to call in by phone, we have still been able to accommodate everyone. And I realize that there are pockets around the state that don't have access, but there's also the majority of the state that doesn't come to the Capitol. Not everyone comes. And what I've heard from folks participating in LHHS and letting me know their grassroots organizations, advocates, lobbyists, is that this provides them, by the fact that we did it virtually, far greater access than they've had in the past. because they couldn't do the traveling and coming in person. So I just want to say there is another side to the story, and LHHS has done, I think, been really successful with that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say it is really hopeful news about the vaccines that are being developed and that they are looking promising. We do have some access to super cold storage in New Mexico, that's true. But to have adequate supply of the vaccine and deploy it twice. Some vaccines, it's even 3 times. Some it's just once, but it'll take, I think, many months before it is widely available and widely deployed and utilized before it would be safe. So while I had advocated earlier for a delay because there may be a promising vaccine or decrease in the numbers are not going down. And thank you, Senator Ivy Soto, for sharing that website. They're going to continue to go up. It does not look good through March, and I don't think by delaying a couple of months, it's going to make a significant difference about us being able to safely include the public and be together actually as well. So while I appreciate the many options being offered and keeping our options open, I'm pretty convinced that the only way we're safe and the public is safe and can have the maximum amount of participation is to do it virtually. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to go back to our first meeting. I was thrilled to hear Senator Ivy Soto use almost the exact language that I was using when I first recommended a completely virtual session. I just want to remind everybody what life was like if you wanted to interact with our legislature before the pandemic. It was a one-way communication. We talked at you. You had to watch us do our business and our work. Because of how we've adjusted and how we've learned how to do this work now, you have much more participation, many more questions, much more analysis coming in from across the field, across the state, down in the South 40, up in the northern part of the state, east and west. I understand. I have a very rural portion of my district, and I have a city portion of my district. And I want everybody to have access to this legislature. I want to also remind everybody some of the comments I made before from a technology standpoint, which are very important, I think. We can go to the internet service providers, and I recommend it, a fully virtual session this time around. And the reason I said that was just because it's the foolproof way. It's the only way that we can truly keep the legislative members, the staff who work their hearts out during the legislature and work just as hard as we do, and the public safe, is to do this completely virtual. Again, it is incredibly important that we model the behavior that we expect of every other New Mexican. If we are truly going to get behind or beyond this, we need to be leaders in our community. Many of the folks that we represent have met us along the way. And when they hear and see us doing our work this way, I think it's going to be very helpful that way. But from a technology standpoint, we can go to the internet service providers that service the Roundhouse, that service Santa Fe, and we can basically pump up the volume, if you will, so that the portion of the interaction that's happening from us in the legislature is minimized in terms of loss, disconnection, or whatever it may be. And that'll help out there in the hinterlands to get people, online and be able to participate. I heard, Mr. Speaker, you say something that I was going to mention here, and I just want to reiterate this, is I'm already working in my district, Mr. Speaker and Madam Pro Tem. I'm already working in my district to set up hotspots around my district where you can come and participate in the legislative session. Public buildings, libraries, schools, and other senior centers, if you will. And then I want to go back to reminding the committee here that it's a two-way interaction, whereas before it was a one-way interaction. And so those are things I wanted to mention today that I just think, again, super duper important that we model the behavior we expect of every other New Mexican. And when I want to throw something else in here, Mr. Speaker, and I hope I don't throw the whole thing off the rails here, but when we had the special session, I was personally offended that we as colleagues, as friends, as we all know each other's families, this and that. I was personally offended that a lot of my colleagues on the Senate refused to wear their masks on the Senate floor, which is a building and a chamber that is underground in a round building that is about, I don't know, 300, 400, 600 years old, with the a ventilation system being what it is, and we didn't have the common courtesy to look out for each other that way. So I hope that this body will also discuss whatever, if we do wind up having face-to-face interaction here, which I would love. I'm the last person that doesn't want to be around people and get to see people and work with them face-to-face. And I know we're going to get back to that, Mr. Speaker, but I just hope that we all honor each other and that we wear those masks. We're not expected to see the peak of this thing until the end of January. These things are very important. If we don't model that behavior, we're not going to see other New Mexicans doing that, and it's going to prolong this issue that we want to get past and get beyond from an economic development standpoint, telehealth standpoint, distance learning standpoint, you name it. But there's a way to do this from a technology standpoint. There's a way to mobilize as leaders in our communities by creating legislative interaction hotspots. There's a way to do this by wearing masks if we do have to see each other face to face. And so I just want to make those mentions, or mention all that stuff, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And we should never pass up the opportunity to remind everyone to wear a mask, especially when you're indoors with someone who's not a member of your household. Next, we have Senator Sanchez.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you, Senator Sanchez.
Mr. Speaker, could you please ask people who aren't speaking to mute? We're getting a lot of outside noise. Thank you.
Yeah, everyone, that's a good reminder. Please mute if you're not making a comment.
Somebody keeps on. Okay, I think I'm on now. Hold on, I'm getting some feedback.
Senator Sanchez, you've got several laptops.
There you go. How's that now?
There you go.
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have to unmute you?
No. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you. All right, Senator Sanchez, we'll come back to you. You need to turn on the speaker and turn off the microphone. You need to turn on your speaker and turn off the microphone on the other laptops. Okay, we'll go to Representative Thompson, and then we'll come back to Senator Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really want to thank Senator Padilla for his words about the mask wearing. We saw the same thing on the other side. One thing that hasn't been brought up, right now, if you want to come to Santa Fe from anywhere, including Santa Fe probably, but anywhere outside of Santa Fe, you either have to have a car or access to a car. Okay, you've got that. Then you have to have money for gas to get there. And if you're coming from far away, you've got to have money for food and for a place to stay. So if we look at having more people involved in what we're doing, we are opening it up to people who do not have the means to make the trip to Santa Fe. They may not have childcare. They may have to work. So, we say, well, we're keeping some people out. I'm of the opinion we're inviting many more people in who've never, ever been able to be involved before. And in addition to that, Representative Armstrong talked about our Health and Human Services Committee meetings, and there were glitches. There's glitches when we're there live. The speakers are late, whatever. We had those same kind of glitches. That's not a reason to say we can't do it. And in the public comment, in Health and Human Services, when we're doing it in person, we generally have the same list of characters doing public comment in our in-person meetings. When we were doing it virtually, we got people we'd never heard from before, and we probably would not have heard from if they had to drive to wherever we were. So I think it's really disingenuous to say we're disenfranchising the public because we're not letting them spend money to drive to Santa Fe. What we're actually doing is enfranchising people who don't have the money to come to Santa Fe or for whatever reason. So it bothers me when people say that we're keeping rural people out, because that is not the intent, and I don't believe that that will be the outcome either. Health and safety have to be number one. We have a member of our house who has had COVID, and it's just, we need to take it seriously and stop trying to pit rural against urban, because that's not what this is about. This is about keeping all New Mexicans safe and getting our work done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Next, we have Representative Maestas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Members, Representative Thompson laid out so thank you for that, Representative Thompson. Just a couple quick points. You know, the folks are debating whether to do the 60 days now or the 60 days later. I suggest we do both. I suggest, regardless of what we do January, February, March, this state needs so much work and it needs to move forward in such a impactful, rapid way that we still need to come back in the summertime and do more. Keep in mind that takes either an agreement from the minority. We need to either pull ourselves in executive session, I believe it's 2/3 vote, or an agreement from the chief executive that a special session includes everything. It's not anything that's restrictive in terms of what we're going to volunteer to carry a certain number of bills this session to focus. That should not prohibit us from introducing bills that deal with the economy. There should be no limit to any bills dealing with the economy and climbing out of the economic crisis. And then next year, the 30-day session should not be restricted either. The chief executive should not restrict us in any means from introducing any bills that pertain to New Mexico. And we should have an additional 30-day session next year. There is so much work to do. So I really appreciate the leadership and the council coming up with these options, you know, renting the convention center in anticipation of utilizing it. It's going to be a game time decision. It's like the teams that train for 2 months and they can't play it. You know, we still have to train just as hard, and we need to turn it into a positive with regards to the comments that were mentioned, that this is the first time ever in the history of New Mexico that folks don't have to be in the roundhouse to participate. And so it's kind of ironic that we hear criticisms that Santa Fe is too far. It's 5 miles from my house. Nobody could ever go. And now those same persons are criticizing the fact that they can't go, even though they couldn't go before. So my point is, Mr. Chair, members, we need to, you know, we need to all, you know, get our Zoom accounts going, be prepared to do virtual town halls, be prepared to have office hours so that there's no committee meetings or floor meetings, so that we can get back in touch with our constituents, encourage our constituents, and train them how to participate virtually, so that we can maximize participation. And then lastly, the high rise in my hometown, Mr. Speaker. I live on a 2-acre lot. The guy 3 doors down from me has horses. There's really no urban area in New Mexico. So I really resent the fact that my friends who live in these beautiful small towns keep harping on this rural urban divide when the urbanites, the so-called urbanites, aren't perpetuating that at all. It's the representatives of the rural areas that continuously bang this myth that there's this divide. There is no divide. We're all New Mexicans. We're all New Mexicans, and we're all in this together. And between now and January 19, the crisis is going to get worse. The crisis is going to get worse. There's going to be more cases. There's going to be more sicknesses. There's going to be more death. And so we have to do our darndest to keep our community safe and do what needs to be done, given the fact that that the pandemic is worse today than it's ever been in this country. So in all ideas in performing our duties on January 19, I welcome, I honor those ideas, and I appreciate everybody who's coming forward with solutions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Next, we have Representative Roybal Caballero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. And a lot of what I wanted to introduce, I mentioned in the chat, but I wanted to highlight a few things, and I want to thank Senator Ivy Soto because I just went to the site that he shared with us, and it's absolutely wonderful information, and I think all of us should have that on our browser, and we should be monitoring it on a regular basis because those projections, as dictated on the site, will help us monitor on behalf and discuss this with our constituencies, as well as help us along with our decision-making processes that we obviously are faced with difficulty doing. However, it also gives us, Mr. Chair, a wonderful opportunity also to have our communities work closer together. And I think someone mentioned that already, and that is that it gives us the opportunity to have, to open up churches and schools and universities and community colleges and public facilities like libraries and others, which I've been mentioning along with others over and over again, to be able to invite public participation. And as Representative Maestas also mentioned, it also gives us the opportunity to introduce digital world to perhaps the world that has not had the opportunity to have that access. And I think it's our obligation as elected to be at the forefront of doing this, to break the ground on making sure that our communities are as informed, as educated, as up to date, and have as much access, but also work uniformly and united as a community, now more than ever. As we've mentioned, we cannot be dwelling on divides. We need to be looking at ways in which to unite our communities. This is about uniting our communities against a deadly disease that is killing us on multiple fronts and multiple communities and in all of our families, one way or the other. It is affecting us, and there is no escape from it. And as such, we need to take this as an opportunity, as a way to, however way you want to think about this pandemic, philosophically, ideologically, spiritually, we need to take it as, in my view, as a gift, because it gives us the opportunity to pull our communities together, united, and not divide it. And I agree with the statements that were made that we need to stop this divide. In our community and the Southwest Mesa and throughout the state, there are those of us that have continuously referred to and also always included rural communities in our discussions, because we know for a fact that the vast majority of our communities, land mass-wise, are rural located. But that does not mean that they've been at a disadvantage or that they've been ignored, because if anything, we, as the vast majority in this legislature, are very cognizant of that because we've traveled the state. During our interim, Mr. Chair, thank God we've had the opportunity in the past few years to travel all over our state, to travel these rural communities, to understand exactly how remote they are and how disproportionately they are being served for a number of reasons. So if anything, this is the time for us to take the opportunity to remove divides, remove that language from my vocabulary right now, and look at ways in which to unite us and to be concerned about what we decide to do. Everything that we decide to do, we need to do so with the idea that we're going to be flexible, adaptable, and that we're going to be open to as much introduction of new ideas, creative and innovative, so that we can begin to really and truly represent the communities that we were elected to do, not just on a district basis, but we also are New Mexico state senators and New Mexico state representatives. When we stand up, we talk about representing with those titles, and then we just add our districts at the end. So I just want us to remember that this COVID pandemic is affecting each and every one of our families, and every illness that this state experiences at the highest levels is also the most, makes the healthcare of our population much more vulnerable because we suffer from all the highest numbers of heart disease, lung disease, kidney disease, immune disorders possible. And if you can, and you need to compare that, you can compare it, our state, with those health illnesses with other states, and you'll see that we're going to be the ones at the very top. So, and instead of being at the bottom of the poll, this time we're at the top, because all these illnesses make our state even much more vulnerable, which forces us to then be much more decisive and definitive and united in our decisions. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Senator Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologize for the previous mishap there. I know, as I mentioned before, I don't have a dog in this fight because I'm not going to be here in January, but I am still a member of the council. So anyway, I think using the convention center or the PRC building or any other building, to me is a lot more dangerous or unsafe than being in what they call so-called a bubble in the Capitol. Just like the way the baseball teams and football teams and whoever's doing that now. But I think moving people around the city of Santa Fe could spread the disease even further. That's just my opinion on using the convention center or any other building. Secondly, I think that, or I feel that the legislature should come in under what they're required to under the Constitution, to come in, convene, swear everybody in, the new people, the existing people, and come in at a later date, possibly the end of February, and work on the budget. Get the budget, the feed bill. Maybe the feed bill needs to be done early. Then the budget, get that done, and adjourn, and then come back into a special session or an extraordinary session to cover all the other legislation that's being discussed out there. By also coming in later on in the 60-day session, that will give us a better revenue picture of where our revenues will be for the coming fiscal year. That's just kind of what I think. I think also whenever you do come in, I think there needs to be a constitutional amendment to change the legislative days from March to May later on in the year. That will give you a better revenue picture for the upcoming year, because right now we don't get accurate numbers as we probably should have. But anyway, I just think, Mr. Chair, we need to pass a budget. So government can continue working come July 1st, and any other legislation can be handled this time in a special session or extraordinary. This is a one-time thing, hopefully a one-time thing, assuming we don't get another pandemic or something like that. But I think that's kind of the safe way to do it. But I don't feel that going into the convention center or PRC building or anywhere else around the state, the city, you're just moving spreading the virus around or bringing it back in from other areas. That's just kind of my opinion, Mr. Chairman, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have Representative Dow next. Representative Dow, are you with us?
Yes, sir. I'm actually going to step over to Senator Sanchez's seat here. We're juggling meetings. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to speak on for today. However, I just want to clarify that today we are not voting to say yes, that we are going to have a hybrid model and that we are going to engage with the convention center and so some sessions at the House and some sessions. This is just simply to allow the exploration of the idea and the furthering of a contract to be pursued. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
I believe the motion will be to authorize Mr. Burciaga to continue to negotiate and to enter into a contract if needed. That will have a clause in it allowing the contract to be broken without penalty to the legislature.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But by voting to agree for that to move forward, we are, as a body, voting to agree that we are okay with a hybrid model where we will meet without the public in the Capitol, and that input from the public would be limited, that there would be a lottery draw for a certain number of public, up to whatever the health orders at that time, to be able to be present at the Santa Fe Convention Center. People could call in and raise their hand or do public comment by phone at the discretion of the committee chairs. And so to vote for this agreement to move forward would be to vote, in essence, for a hybrid model with limited public on site. Is that correct?
No, it's not.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What part of that is not correct?
You mentioned something about a lottery. That's not part of the vote. You mentioned something about a hybrid model. That's not what we're considering. The council, under the Constitution and laws of New Mexico, does not decide how the chambers conduct their business. So if the Senate decides to do a 100% virtual session, that's a decision made by the Senate, not by the Legislative Council. So, and what the convention center might be used for is up to the House and is up to the Senate. All we're doing with this vote is keeping the option of using the community convention center for some purpose on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I was a designee voter last week, and last week it was presented as a scenario that would be happening if the Capitol was closed. So, and if the Capitol was closed, the other scenarios came into be. But okay, thank you. So at what point would we vote if we agree that there should be a hybrid model, or that we agree that there should be limited public input, or that people can only attend in person through a lottery? Is that a later vote, or you're saying it would be at the discretion of the leadership without a vote?
It depends on what part of what you just said you're talking about. So if it's a question of how many are committees going to be conducted virtually or in person, that would be done the same way we did it in the special session, which was done by adopting a new set of rules that we operated under during the June special session. Those would be votes of the House and, I presume, a vote of the Senate to adopt rules for a hybrid session.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I do think that this has created, these virtual meetings have created an opportunity for the public to be more engaged, assuming that they have reliable internet access. But I do agree with what Chairman Maestas said, that as far as broadband and access and reliability to be able to participate in these meetings, it isn't a rural metro divide. And I think that was demonstrated today when Representative Maestas was in and out where we could not hear him. And Leader Engel, it looks like he's right here in the Capitol and his screen has been freezing throughout this meeting. So, we're having problems statewide, regardless of where you're located. I do think it's that it should be noted that if we're going to act like there's not a rural and metro divide, then we have to acknowledge the letter that was sent to leadership by our ag producers, which are mostly rural. And there are dozens of them that have said they would like a postponement until we can participate in public. The Dairy Farmers of America, New Mexico Association of Conservation Districts, the Chile Association, Federal Lands Council, Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, Farm Credit of New Mexico Cattle Growers Association, Farm and Livestock Bureau, and the New Mexico Wool Growers have all asked that we delay this session until it can happen in person. And those are our rural folks, and they're asking for a postponement. So if we want to put action to that talk that there is no rural or metro divide, I think we should consider their request, and I appreciate Representative Maestas' commitment to that. And I think that, from the time I saw it when Senator Smith suggested in his monthly LFC meeting that we come and do the business of the budget and the feed bill, and then we come back when we can meet and not just follow the rule of law, but follow the intent of law and the precedent we set of allowing the public to participate. And I'm hearing lots of people speak to that today. In fact, it seems like a majority of people in this that get to vote today on this committee, including Senator Sanchez and several others, saying we can do the work that has to be done and honor the intent of our precedent as a body to allow the public to participate. Just today, I'm as a public member, because I'm not a voting member today, I could not raise my hand, and I also cannot comment in the chat. So the assumption that the public can comment in the chats would have to be formatted in a different way. I can see comments, but I cannot provide input. So it's not exactly true to say that it's open to the public. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Dowd, you completely misspoke.
Okay.
First of all, we don't use WebEx during the session, we use Zoom. Second, it has already been done that dozens and dozens of members of the public were admitted to committee meetings during the special session to speak directly to the committee. That has also happened at a great many interim committee meetings this year. We just heard from Representative Armstrong say that members of the public participating on the WebEx platform were admitted to the meeting and were able to speak to the committee members through this platform. So I have to correct that, because the press is watching this,
yes, sir.
The public is watching this, and when you say something that is factually incorrect, we need to correct it so that the public and the press understand that the technology we have works, it is improving, and as we use it more, we all get better at using it.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
I have
Speaker.
no idea why you are not able to use the chat. You show up in the participant list with a different icon next to your name. I don't know if that's because you signed in through a different platform. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you with absolute certainty, and anyone who would like to can go back and watch the archived webcasts of the interim committee meetings to see members of the public participate fully in those meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I do stand corrected, and I have been very appreciative of especially Health and Human Services, not limiting public comment. And if there's some sort of commitment from you today, since the press is watching, that on committees like Commerce and Industry, when it's, say, a gun control bill or an abortion bill, that at that time the public would not be limited, that would be reassuring to the public as well. But it is at the discretion of the committee chair when and how much public comment is allowed.
That has always been the case.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to offer comment? Senator Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I am going to make a motion that authorizes Director Burciaga to do two things. First, to negotiate and enter a lease to rent the Santa Fe Convention Center from January 19th, 2021 through March 20th, 2021, on the condition that the lease contain an exit clause that allows it to be canceled before the session with no liability or penalty to the legislature. And if the session is started, that rent can be prorated for the time used. The second part of the motion is to give Director Burciaga, after consultation with legislative leadership, authority to manage the Capitol and the Convention Center during the 2021 legislative session, as he determines is warranted based on the scientific health and safety data related to COVID. That is my motion, Mr. Chair.
I would second that.
Okay. Do we need a roll call? Is there opposition to the motion?
Mr. Chair, there's opposition. Also, I have a question.
Okay.
Would there be? Thank you.
Representative Montoya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would there be a need for us to meet again, Legislative Council, to discuss where we are with COVID in the lead up to the session and to determine maybe have further discussions at that time as to the direction that we might be going, because it appears if we enter into this agreement today and we don't have that set in place, then we are essentially just signing up by default. Is there going to be some follow-up?
Yes, so we definitely will have another meeting of the council. I think it's in the public interest to make sure that the plans that are put forward by the House and the Senate as to how the session will be conducted. I think the council is a good place to make those public announcements after the various caucuses and leadership have met. So yes is the short answer. In either probably I would say in about a month would probably be a good time. I can imagine that several of the decisions about the conduct of the session can be done by then. So I think we'll shoot for mid-December. Of course, I need to consult with Senator Papen about convening the council, but I think mid-December would probably be a good idea, a good time. It's good. Thank you for the suggestion. Okay, Mr. Fleetwood, would you please?
No, Mr. Speaker.
Hello. Yes.
Speaker, I've got my hand up.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Representative Townsend.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator Worth, would it be when we stop and think about the conversations today, your motion is for a specific period from ending in March. Should we not have options within Director Burciaga's? Should we not give him the option to provide for options subsequent to the March 21st? So in the event that we decided to have a special or an extended period, say through the end of May or something, can we address that and keep those options open for the council to utilize that facility?
So, Mr. Chair, and Leader Townsend, if I could, I think I was basing the motion on my understanding of the conversations that Director Burciaga has had with the city. Nothing would prevent us from, again, approaching the city to extend. But at this point, it was my understanding that the window being discussed was just during the 60-day kind of constitutional window, which is what I based the motion on. And I certainly could yield back to Director Burciaga with respect to that. But I would say nothing would prevent a further discussion down the road. But at this point, the authority is just during this window.
Well, I would just suggest that we get that option in this contract, so we have the opportunity, even if the price was not set, that we would have the option to utilize the facility for an extended period of time. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So if I could, Leader Townsend, I mean, again, I think we can make that change. I had made it very specific from January 19th, 2021 through March 20th. I think we could leave the window from January 19th, 2021 through March 20th, 21 or later, which would give the director full authority then to do that. Would that work with you?
Yes, sir. I think that would give the option to continue to utilize the facility, and the costs would be appropriate. So yes, sir, I think that addresses the issue.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, after the March 20th, 21, just add the two words "or later." I would amend my motion. If whoever seconded it could do an amended second, that would work.
I second the motion.
Okay. Is there opposition to the motion? Okay. So, Mr. Fleetwood, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Speaker, there are a handful of members. If you wouldn't mind muting until I get to your name, and might cut down the feedback a little bit.
Yeah, everyone mute yourself and then unmute yourself to make your vote known, please.
Thank you. Senator Brandt.
Yes.
Senator Brandt, yes. Senator Campos.
Yes.
Senator Campos, yes. Representative Eli.
Yes.
Representative Eli, yes. Representative Ezel. Is that a no? Thank you. Representative Ezel, no. Representative Gallegos.
Yes.
Representative Gallegos. Yes. Senator Ingo.
He's frozen in place.
He can't talk. He's right
Senator
there.
Ingo. I've unmuted you. Senator Ingo, yes. Representative Lundstrom.
Yes.
Representative Lundstrom, yes. Representative Montoya.
Representative Montoya, no.
Senator Montoya, no. Senator Sanchez.
No.
Senator Sanchez, no. Senator Smith.
Yes.
Senator Smith, yes. Representative Stapleton.
Yes.
Representative Stapleton, yes. Representative Townsend.
No.
Representative Townsend, no. Senator Worth.
Yes.
Senator Worth, yes. Senator Woods.
Yes.
Senator Woods, yes. Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, yes. And Senator Papin.
Yes.
Senator Papin, yes. Mr. Speaker, on a vote of 12-4, motion carries.
Okay, thank you, members. I appreciate the discussion today, and we've got lots of good new additional thoughts to consider as we get closer to the session. We'll announce a date for our next meeting. Hopefully that'll be in the middle of December, and hopefully by then we'll have some additional plans that we can announce to the public about how the session will be conducted. Is there any other comment or question before we adjourn? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, thank you all very much. The meeting is adjourned. Stay safe and wear your masks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.